Deontay Johnson tweets something and then everyone goes crazy. Why you shouldn't, and what it actually means, and an actual look at Deontay Johnson's time with the Steelers, because I think that there's a lot of different takes on how he's performed. Granted, he didn't score a touchdown, but I think there's still a lot more on the bone with Deontay Johnson's time with the Steelers. That and Teryl Austin talk with the future of his place with the Steelers defense right here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. It's Tony Serino Thursday time. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things at the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on the video if you enjoy it. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is, of course, daily fantasy made easy. Just pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Pick projection, you get up to 10 times your money on any entry. First time, you just receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On at prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. As I said before, we are rejoined by the man himself, the legend, a former host of the Locked On Steelers podcast, and my good friend. It's time for a Tony Thursday. Tony Serino's back. How you doing, Tony?
Love it. Love it. Still got a ring to it here. We still got the alliteration going on. Happy to be back. And, you know, Chris, as you said that intro, we're going to be talking about Diontae and then this tweet here. I'm glad on a day like this where we kind of need to read between the lines. You know, we need to try to be more reasonable about a thing that's a little bit getting in conspiracy land. I'm glad you brought someone like me on today who's known for being very reasonable at times like
you
this.
never
so
do
I appreciate that.
conspiracies.
No, exactly. I'm just a very reasonably thought out person who doesn't, you know, jump into any sort of conspiracy. Let's say, for instance, that there was a Washington football team playing at Pittsburgh International.
Oh, man.
Does that mean Mike Tomlin is being traded to Washington? Yes, it absolutely does. Yes, and I'm still waiting for it to happen. I don't understand this is 4 years going on now. I don't know what kind of deal they had, but
you are crazy, sir. That was a real theory that we discussed on this show way back when. But let's dive into this conspiracy theory. So this all started because Deontay Johnson at approximately 10:04 a.m. on Tuesday tweeted out, "Ain't gonna say too much, ... but stay tuned 100." And then he blocked a bunch of people on Twitter, myself included. And then kind of went dark, and everyone was like, oh, what does that mean? Is he leaving the Steelers? And then someone checked his Instagram. He doesn't follow the Steelers anymore. He clearly has a problem with the team. And, you know, then I think people had time to kind of dissect some things and just be like, well, he wasn't following the Steelers on Instagram. He hasn't for quite some time. And then people were like, if he actually hated the Steelers, why was he tweeting like very positive things about Kenny Pickett and Mike Tomlin? And like, why was he one of the leading talkers all year about getting a non-losing season or a winning season to keep Mike Tomlin's streak alive when even Mike Tomlin didn't talk about that kind of stuff? What I said, and I tweeted this out as well, acknowledging that, hey, he even blocked me. And I'm a person who, like, I've criticized Diontae, but I've also said, like, that guy is so underrated for what he does. But, like, I get it. This is what Diontae does. He at the end of a year, he'll tweet something kind of cryptic and just leave it at that. And then he blocks people and he goes to work. And then he just ignores social media for a while and he works to improve his game, which is why he's so good at separating from defenders. Yes, he has some drops here and there, but I think this is just who he is. This is just such a non-story.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, it's certainly a non-story until we get something more. I mean, you know, trying to read into the tweet, then, you know, the unfollowing or whatnot. I don't know. I heard he took down all his Steeler pictures on Instagram. I don't know if that's true or not. Even if it is,
his Twitter profile picture is still of him in a Steelers jersey. So
okay, yeah. I mean, look. Okay, let's just put it this way. If Diontae is upset right now because, you know, look, he just set a record that I'm sure no wide receiver wants to set. Right, the most catches in a season without scoring a touchdown. Not great. Now, you know, I'm sure as we'll talk about, I don't think we would put that on the skill set of Deontay Johnson. I don't think there was something that Diontae did in 2022 to prevent himself from scoring, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of context around that stat. You know, this the Steelers just didn't score a whole lot of touchdowns in 2022.
Yeah.
But I think, look, until this becomes a real thing, I think I'm with you. This is a non-story unless we get some new information, right? I mean, unless we start to hear that Diontae is upset or that he regrets signing that deal in training camp a year ago or something else other than who he is and isn't following. I mean, the fact that you got blocked, the fact that, you said like a lot of the writers got blocked. I mean, that to me, that's like the most damning thing. But, if this is something he does every offseason, then again,
yeah.
Look, I think Steeler fans know. We've seen our fair bit of drama in the offseason, over the last couple of years. I guess you have to go back now, maybe 5 or 6, but still, this is nothing. This is nothing until this becomes a real thing. Until we get a real report about this, I don't think there's anything to worry about for Steeler fans.
Yeah, I think it's a non-issue, but I do think it gives us the chance to talk a little bit more about Diontae and just like, he finished with the most catches ever in a year without a touchdown, 86 receptions, 882 yards, never got above 100 yards in a game. Granted, he got 98 once. But there's certainly some questions there. But I also think that Deontay Johnson, and this is, he'll be 27 next year. He'll be entering the prime of his career, and he'll have 4 years of experience. And in none of those years has he had elite quarterback play, or even like I'd say above average quarterback play for an entire season. I think Ben had a point there in 2020. He was performing very well, and then he dropped off.
Right. And then he played with Duck for I think 3 games that year only. So like you said, not a full season.
I should have known. Okay. I walked right into that. Yeah, that was a softball, right? For Tony's whole Duck Hodges is going to the Hall of Fame talk. But in 2019, Ben goes down into just 2 games in his rookie year, and then it's Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges for the rest of the year. 2020, Ben's kind of hot early to start, and they had like some good connections here and there, but then Ben kind of fades later in the season, and it doesn't kind of go over well. Then 2021, he does get 1,100 yards, 1,161 yards, and 8 touchdowns, and makes a Pro Bowl off of those numbers. But it's still Ben Roethlisberger, very limited, as you've called him, washed Ben Roethlisberger at that point in time. And then 2022, Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett are his quarterbacks. He's never had a chance to like go off like the way that Juju did with a little bit of prime Ben at the start of Juju's career, or Martavis Bryant or Antonio Brown or Mike Wallace, or a lot of the Steelers receivers who have had some supreme seasons for them. And I think the fact that he's hung in there and still become this much sharper route runner goes to show that I think when they do get a quarterback, when Kenny Pickett does evolve and steps into the next stage of his career, like I think he will very soon. I think I like Deontay Johnson's chances to become a really big threat in the NFL, and we'll get more recognition.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think it's been an open question throughout his entire career. There's been no doubting that he is. I think it's safe to say he is an elite route runner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think. Who is it? ESPN does like the open score. I don't know if you've seen this, where like because they have the trackers and all the players, they can actually track who is the most open receiver on specific routes and whatnot. I believe he was tracked as the most open, or he had the best open score of any receiver in the National Football. He was the best at getting open in the NFL. And so I'm with you. It's been an open question throughout his career. Like if you really gave this guy, a truly great quarterback, we can debate about whether or not Ben was how washed was Ben at the end of his career. It wasn't prime Ben, and certainly with the quarterback play that they had this season, it certainly was not this is what we're talking about, below average play for the majority of the season. So I'm with you. It's always been an open question of what is the ceiling for this guy, right? Could he be like a Stephon Diggs type? I've always thought yes. I mean, I've always thought, hey, this guy could be like an elite route runner. I think one thing he did take a step back in this year was run after catch.
Yeah.
That was a problem, but I don't want to put it all on him, because it wasn't like this offense was great in run after catch at all, right? I mean, it was a part of the offense that just did not exist for the entirety of the 22 season. And so I don't want to put that specifically on Diontae, but I think it is something he needs to improve on going forward. But no, like you said, he is, he has elite traits. What he needs now is a quarterback play who can unlock some of his talents.
Absolutely. And you are right. 538, did their scores all season long. And after a full season, Deontay Johnson ranks as the #1 wide receiver at getting open. Also, side by side, number one at quote unquote making the catch, George Pickens, with a full 99 rating. So again, I think that there's a lot of people who want to add to the wide receiver room in the NFL draft right away with the first round pick. And I'm not saying you can't do one later, but I think there's other clear needs. And I think that both these guys are good weapons. They just got to kind of develop with Kenny Pickett, build some chemistry. It takes time to do that. And keep going with where they're at. You get Calvin Austin back next year. Maybe you sign Steven Sims back to the roster, and you're going to probably feel good about your top 4 guys. And maybe you draft a guy in the 4th or 5th round, and then all of a sudden it turns out to be Antonio Brown Jr. And yeah, he may be a head case, but then he's the best receiver in the NFL. I'm just saying they seem to pull one of those out of their butts every year. Every so often. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers receiving core gets to they don't change that much, but their stats change simply because Kenny Pickett will be more comfortable and adjusting week in and week out.
And I think Tomlin talked about this in his postseason press conference. He was asked, like, "Hey man, the offense was pretty conservative this year. Was that intentional, or was that just kind of how the season played out?" And he did the whole Tomlinism: when you got red paint, you paint the barn red. The whole thing. But I mean, he basically said, "Look, we started to open it up more at the end of the year, but that's like a natural progression of a young offense." You and I talked about this, I think, maybe it was a month or two ago, when we talked about, like, this isn't a 30-point a game offense yet, but it's not from lack of the players on the field, right? It's just those guys have to grow. And I think, I think you're absolutely right. As this offense continues to grow, as we start to see a better Kenny Pickett, we will also therefore see the true potential of a guy like a Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about what his potential could be, and it's like, if we're in the future sometime, and it's like, oh wow, of course that he's putting up these kind of numbers with a young quarterback who's really comfortable in the defense. I mean, I think you'd agree with me, Tony. Kenny Pickett made really good strides this year. Now it'll just be about taking that next step moving forward. So we'll see about Deontay Johnson, but I think the story right now is, with all the social media gossip, don't buy into it. It's just more hogwash. But I want to talk to Tony about Teryl Austin, because we used to go at it about Keith Butler. This is the first year of post Keith Butler, and I want to get him his thoughts on Teryl Austin real quick here. But first, we got to talk to you guys about betonline.net. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NFL playoffs as that goes along. But the NBA, NHL, all things sports also are on BetOnline, your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more of the trends in the action when you visit BetOnline, where the game starts. We're also brought to you by Ultimate Football GM, the ultimate game that if you want to prove that you're the GM that can lead a team to glory, here's your chance. You can download this game on your mobile device at any point in time or play online. And when you do, you take over as the GM. You can buy a new stadium. You can hire and fire all the coaches you want, your staff, your sports psychologist. You can build a scouting department, all the things you want to do, including trading players, making draft picks, signing players to contracts that you think are great. Do all the things that a GM does, even deal with in-season decisions, like if a player gets a DUI, what happens to them? All those things are available in this game, as it tries to get lifelike as possible for you to leave a football franchise. And Locked On Steelers listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise stats and all the things they can get in the game by using the promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On, all capital letters, all one word, in the game store. So go there, download the game, or visit the ultimate-gm.com, ultimate-gm.com, or get the game in app stores. It's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. And when we do back-to-back ad reads, we keep it rolling, Tony. Let's keep it rolling here with Teryl Austin talk on the Pittsburgh Steelers here. Now, the Steelers defense like the Steelers themselves, had an up and down year. But at the end of the season, they finished 10th in points allowed, 13th in yards allowed. They lead the NFL in interceptions. But funny enough, they're dead last in fumbles. That they were able to recover, which kind of balanced them out to be the 14th best turnover team in the NFL. But this was a defense that at times struggled to stuff the run, but lost its best player in TJ Watt for 7 weeks. How do you assess Teryl Austin as a defensive coordinator in his first year, considering the bumps that they ran into?
Yeah, I mean, I think for this defense, like you said, it got better as the year went on. Obviously, the level of competition went down in the second half of the season. But even still, right? I mean, I don't. You can only play who's in front of you, and certainly, I think this defense probably had more cohesion, in the second half of the season. Now it'll help, obviously, that TJ is back. But I think if you're looking at where should the concerns be defensively, I don't know so much that it was a coaching issue in as far as some of the poor performances this year. So much it was, just a lack of talent at certain places, right? And I think there was clearly a misevaluation of the edge rush position and certainly the depth there. Obviously you look at the turnover that this team went through when you talk about what happened in training camp and into the regular season. Quite literally, I think, was it no one that made the initial 53-man roster was actually in training camp? I mean, they traded for Malik Reed and they signed, I believe, Jameer Jones off of the Giants waivers. So, obviously that's an issue. I think there was probably a misevaluation of the cornerback room, especially when it comes to Akilo. Now, obviously, he went down with a hamstring injury in like week 3 or 4, and we didn't see him again. The times we did see of him maybe weren't ideal. But again, I think what we, as the kind of season went along, starting to see the introduction of more Robert Spillane, especially against those more run-heavy teams down the stretch. I think the inclusion of a lot of the young talent there, right? Our boy Loudermilk got some time at the end of the year, as did DeMarvin Leal. I think he did the as good as he could with the talent that he had in front of him, right? Knowing that you're going to have TJ gone for 8 weeks of the season, and then starting to understand some of the talent deficiencies that they had. I think it was certainly a case of making the best out of what you got. We went into the season thinking top 5 defense. We come out of the season thinking, okay, probably closer to average, but that closer to average is as we found out throughout the season, maybe the Steelers need to address some certain positions on this defense from a talent perspective.
I think one of the key things that they're going to need to address is the linebacker room. Devin Bush, I thought improved this year from last year, but still isn't the guy that you wanted for your 10th overall pick. And I doubt he's back next year just from all the tones that we got from him and the Steelers kind of about that situation. He also played like 5 snaps in the season finale, and I think it was around that range for the 2 games before that as well. So I think the Steelers want guys who are going to hit, who are going to change the tone of games, that are going to move around, that are going to be kind of willing guys that are leading in the middle part of the field. I wonder what they're going to do with Myles Jack, because I think that he was really good when he was not injured. I think in the latter part of the season, he was hurt and trying to fight through it, and then wasn't able to at times. I think there were times he got beat, but like next year, his contract, it has him costing $11.2 million against the cap. And I find it hard to justify that based off of his production this year. But I do think that he's a good veteran. He'll be 20. He's 27 years old. I do think that he'll be a guy who you could lean on and say, you know what, we're going to extend you for about 2 more years. We're going to chop that cap number down to maybe like $7 million. And, you'll still get some money, but we need to create some space to get some other people up in here. But I think Myles Jack is a good veteran guy that can lead and kind of be in the middle there. Cause I think he also helped Devin Bush figure himself out there.
Certainly. Oh yeah. No, I think his addition. I'm with you. Kind of help Devin. Now I'm also with you. I think Devin is likely no longer going to be a Steeler. He'll likely sign somewhere else, which does leave a bit of a hole, right? Because Robert Spillane is also a free agent. I think we both expect, given how the coaching staff, is love too strong a word? They love Robert Spillane. I think Spillane will be back. Now, okay, so if Spillane is back, does that mean that you could, could Myles Jack be a salary cap casualty? I just don't see it, because this team has to address the defensive line. They probably are going to address corner. I just don't know that you want to make a problem for yourself in this defense, right? I agree with you that when Myles was healthy, things were going well. It wasn't splash. It certainly wasn't. I kind of had a picture in my mind of him potentially bringing more splash to this defense. It certainly wasn't that. But again, he brought a steadiness to this linebacking core that they had missed. Now, obviously, the injuries are a problem, and injuries have been a problem for his entire career. That's really the rap on Myles, is that he can't stay healthy for a 16-game season. That happened again to him here. So, I guess 17-game season now. So I do wonder if like you said, maybe they do say, hey, we'll tack another year on, but we want you to take a little salary cap reduction in order to do so. I just think linebacker is a spot that they can upgrade, but you don't want to make a problem for yourself by cutting Miles Jack, and now all of a sudden, we got to bring in 2 new guys, right? Something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with that sentiment as well. I look at the Steelers linebacker situation, think that needs to be added to. I think they need another, edge guy. Malik Reed was, I think there were times that he filled in and did an okay job as a backup, but I think you really need a third creator there. And again, this is the time to do this kind of stuff. Kenny Pickett's on his rookie deal. If you believe that he's going to be the guy, even if you don't, you're not paying a quarterback big money. You're paying TJ Watt big money. You're paying Minkah Fitzpatrick big money, and you're paying Cam Hayward big money. And those last two kind of just decent for where they make. Invest. Go get some big name guys, to add there. Maybe pay for a top tier cornerback veteran, that you can go get. Or do that for the offensive line or the defensive line. I think Larry Ogunjobi should be back. But
you think so? You think he'll be back?
I think he could be back.
Okay, interesting. Well, I just assumed because I do think I think he gets paid somewhere. Although I guess I don't know. He was good, not great this year, right? I mean,
right.
Again, he only had he had like 1.5 sacks. I haven't seen the pressure numbers, but to me, once again, he was another guy, especially in that time without Watt, when it felt like, all right, they're going to need some. It wasn't like the Steelers really lacked for a ton of talent on that defensive front. They lacked for elite TJ Watt talent on that defensive front. And that's where I felt like what was disappointing to me during that time without TJ was we didn't see, a big step up like Larry Ogunjobi as a pass rusher. He's a good pass rusher. I mean, we have seen in the past. He can be a very good pass rusher. And the Steelers, they just didn't have that guy. So I don't know. I guess I could see them bringing Ogunjobi back, but I wouldn't want to pay him, any sort of like top dollar. I can't remember the deal he signed with Chicago last year, but it wasn't necessarily cheap, the deal that he signed with Chicago. And if he's going to get that kind of deal again, I don't know that I'm willing to make that deal to bring Larry back. Now, as far as the edge rusher, you and I are simpatico here. I just think, we get to about what do you think? What do you think? Like second, third week of July before they bring JJ out of retirement?
I was wondering where you were going with this. I was like, oh, that's what he's doing here. He's got to get another set of brothers, man. That's how you work. And they're going to get Tremaine Edmunds. See, now that's a move that I think would make sense, getting Tremaine Edmonds, Teryl Austin's brother. We're going to talk about that in just a minute here, and other moves that the Steelers could make here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, got to talk to you guys about Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, that's why you got to try Built Bar. The holidays are over and everyone's trying to eat healthier, but if you still want something tasty to eat, Built Bar is the best option because it's healthy and tasty, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. They come in so many different flavors like churro, peanut butter, brownie, coconut almond, and so many more. All of these flavors with only packing 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and fitting 17 grams of protein into your Built Bars. That's amazing. You don't need to wait around to get a box either anymore. For years, we've talked about it on these shows about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com and having them delivered to your door. Well, now you can pick up you can pick up your stores at local Walmarts and Sand Clubs. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today and you can walk to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4 box of Built Bars with the cookies and cream flavors, double chocolates, or coconut puffs. If you're close to a Sam's Club, you can run in and grab a 13-bar box with the hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro. Trust me, when you try these Built Bars, you'll thank me later. Try Built Bar right now. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Tony Serino. Tony, let's talk more about this defense. Teryl Edmunds kind of hinted that it would be nice if they went and got his brother Tremaine Edmonds, and it's one of those things that I think could be a fan thing. But also, this was something that I said last year. People thought I was crazy when I said they could go get Miles Jack, and I was just like, this is that was a team that was going to be unloading salary cap. Miles Jack was a very expensive player, and they had some tough decisions to make, and he ended up going, and the Steelers ended up picking him up.
Yeah.
I do wonder what could happen to a Tremaine Edmonds in this in this situation here, because if I'm looking at if I'm looking at opportunities to add to the linebacker room, right? I'd be looking at Tremaine Edmunds because he is an unrestricted free agent as it stands right now.
Yep.
He's very young, just like Terrell Edmonds. He's 20. He'll be 25 next season. He'll be packing 4 or 5 years, the same amount of experience as Terrell Edmonds because they came out of the draft the same year. He played 5 years of NFL experience. And he's been pretty solid. You know, he's been a very good linebacker, good in coverage. He can help against the run. And, you know, I think that you might have a chance to attract him with a Terrell Edmonds. I'd like the idea of adding a player like him to pair next to Myles Jack while you get maybe another younger linebacker to wait behind them and then be your third option off the bench because it's obvious they need a rotation there.
Yeah, no doubt. I laugh because it's just so obvious that it's like you could almost paint a picture for Steeler fans this offseason and say like it's going to be the most boring offseason of your lives because I can tell you right now who they're going to take in free agency and the draft. They are taking Tremaine Edmonds as their big free agency signing on day one, like Mitch Trubisky last year. And then on day one of the draft, Joey Porter Jr. Yeah. And there you go. I mean, and look, as far as Edmonds at the linebacker, look, he was very highly touted coming out of where did he play? Tech? BT, right?
Virginia Tech, just like Terrell. Yeah. Just
like Terrell. He was very highly thought of. I don't think he's lived necessarily up to that kind of billing. But this is a rangy sideline to sideline guy. He's physical.
6'5", by the way.
Yes. Yeah. Super athlete. it is an Edmonds thing, right? Terrell, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Super athlete, physical and run defense. I think he checks all the boxes for what Mike Tomlin will be looking for at the position. I'm not going to be shocked at all. I think it's really just going to come down to money. Someone, because I think he is probably going to be the best off-ball linebacker in this free agency class. Mm-hmm. He's likely going to get an overpay. Now usually that's not a Kevin Colbert move, right? Kevin Colbert's very much a pick and choose type of guy.
Yep.
But Kevin Colbert's not here anymore. We got Joe Marcon, Andy Weidel time. Yeah.
And on top of that, I think this is a different thing because for many years that we were used to Kevin Colbert, he was dealing with a roster that needed to protect, the salaries of Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown and guys like that.
Right.
You don't have that quarterback situation anymore. Certainly you have it for TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, and those guys. But this is the time to be aggressive with your roster, add some more guys to it, and build it up. And I think Tremaine Edmonds, could be a guy that you add at 25 years old next year.
Yeah.
You say you're paying him $12, $13, $14 million a year and you keep him around. But the Steelers did that with James Ferrier in the early parts, and he was a captain for the Steelers defense through that. I think bringing in a guy like Tremaine Edmonds would be a good locker room presence to team up with Terrell. I think that he'd be a heck of a player on the field. And again, you wouldn't be asking him to be the superstar of the defense because you have those already. You have TJ, you have Minka, you still will have Cam Hayward. He's getting older, but he's still that guy. Sure. I just think that you put him there and you're not asking him to do as much. That's where he could come in and be a huge asset for you.
Absolutely. You're asking a guy to come in, whoever you sign, right? You sign a corner, you sign a D-line, you sign a linebacker. You're asking that player to potentially be the fourth best. Even if you get into a big contract, you're asking him to be the fourth best player on this defense. Because like you said, they got 3 stars right now. And I agree with you on Cam. Like, yes, Cam is getting up there in age, but you wouldn't tell by watching. You wouldn't be able to tell that from play on the field, right? You're not watching Cam like in that Baltimore game. You're not looking at a guy going like, boy, he's in the twilight of his career. Far from it. So now I'm with you on that. One interesting piece though, what do you think they do with William Jackson III? Because
I think here's the discussion. You didn't play for us. You're not making $12.7 million a year. Want to make $4 million a year? No. Bye. Yes. Great. Stay. But I think that's the question that they bring him back in because the Steelers kind of acknowledge they missed the boat on getting a superstar cornerback. So Mike Tomlin even said, and we talked about this at the beginning of the season, the plan was to have all decent cornerbacks who could all be like kind of guys that just you trust to not make huge mistakes in games. And then Akello Witherspoon made several big mistakes in games. But, he got hurt. I think the Steelers, they make the effort to resign Cam Sutton. And then you have these discussions with Levi Wallace, Akello Witherspoon. And then you say, okay, what's the plan? Does William Jackson agree to a contract? If yes, you could probably let go of Witherspoon or Wallace. And judging by the way, things finished this year, I'd say the answer would be letting go of Witherspoon, keeping Wallace. And then you'd have 3 veteran cornerbacks. And then if you were able to go and get a guy in free agency or in the draft, then you'd have 4 veteran cornerbacks that you would trust to play. And honestly, I know Cam Sutton wants to be an outside guy and live out there, but honestly, if you get back William Jackson, you add a top tier, a guy who can be a CB1 for the future, you could be looking at Cam Sutton bumping back to the slot and kind of being your all over the field guy, and then trusting those 2 other outside corners, and then Levi Wallace is your guy, and then of course we're forgetting the superstar of the group, James Pierre.
James Pierre, thank you. I was worried. I was going we're going to go this whole segment and not make the best point. I like your idea though of kind of Cam. I think he proved he can be an outside corner, right? I mean, I think he had a very good season. But I like your idea of if let's say the Steelers do with the 17th pick, they're going to take a rookie corner. Now, I don't know if that guy's going to come in and start right away. Like you said, it may be Cam and Levi to start. Maybe William Jackson is still on this roster. You kick Cam inside. And then your outside corners are William Jackson and Levi Wallace. With the rookie, though, again, it's one of those things where as the season goes on, that's when potentially he can start working himself into more packages. And you don't have to necessarily feel like that they have to rush him on the field, right? We have to play him from day one. You put yourself in a situation in that corner room where he becomes kind of let's groom him along the way and not, force him out there before he's necessarily ready.
Absolutely. Also, I forgot to bring this up when we were talking about Tremaine Edmonds and why the Bills wouldn't be able to re-sign him, but the Bills are projected to be $5 million over the cap, and they would still need to sign other positions and make some other moves there. So just thinking with all the stars that they've signed, Josh Allen, Tre'Davious White, Stephon Diggs, Ed Oliver, Von Miller, Matt Milano, all those types of guys, I think Tremaine Edmonds is just going to hit the market. And granted, like you said, there's going to be a rush for him. There's going to be things, but the Steelers will have money. Right now they have projected $17 million under the cap. And like I've said before, as soon as you either cut or find a new deal with William Jackson III, there we go. Right. If as soon as you find a new deal with him, you're freeing up at least $7 million.
Salary cap's not gonna be a problem for the Steelers. Have so much fungible money that they can move around because remember they just did the TJ deal, they just did the Minka deal. They can kick the can on those. Move that money. The salary cap is very fun. It is finite, but it's also very fungible.
Exactly. So that being said, I think there's a lot of things they could do to improve this defense, and that's why Teryl Austin. I feel like if you're trying to if people are trying to make harsh judgments right now, good or bad, I feel like it's a lot to do. But I think next year, if they make these investments, they're going to be committing to it, and then we'll get to see. All right, Teryl Austin, what's your defense like? Because I will say, being a DB coach that was promoted to defensive coordinator, the Steelers led the league in interceptions, and it was the DBs doing the interceptions most of the time. There was advantage there. Now imagine if the run stuffing stays consistent all year and your linebacker play is better. Maybe we are talking about a top 5 defense, a top 3 defense next year. And then I think then you can actually criticize and say, well, they've paid so much money. Everyone that says, they're paying it. This is the most expensive defense in the league. Yeah, okay. But, TJ Watt didn't play for, was $30 million of that. If you take his contract off of it for those games that they didn't play well, then it's like the 20th highest defense in the NFL. And it's the same boat. Miles Jack was signed to be, a veteran, not a star leader. If you get a Tremaine Edmonds and keep a Miles Jack and you get like a star cornerback, then I'm like, okay, now I'm on board with this defense. Got to deliver this year.
Yeah, look, this team's going to have 3 picks in the top 50, right? I think, and it's 4 in the top 80 or something like that. I think we can live in a world where 3 of those 4 could potentially be defensive players.
Sure.
Right. And then, as we talked about, right, this team's going to have money to spend. And I would imagine that if this team's going to make a splash in free agency, if they're really going to go out there and sign a top guy, it's probably going to be on the defensive side. I suppose it could be an offensive lineman, but I would guess it's going to probably more than likely be on the defensive side. If those things happen, we're talking about 3 of 4 of your top 80 picks are on defense and you make a splash for agency, I'm with you. Again, the expectation has to be like it was going in. The expectation in this season was they were going to be top 5 again. They didn't meet that mark there. As you said, there are reasons why they didn't do that. Okay, fine. And I don't think anyone's necessarily going to sit here today and put that all on coaching. But they needed to retool this defense. If they go out this offseason and do it again, then the expectation goes right back to being top 5 again. And I think you're right. especially if it's young talent and if it's highly recruited talent in free agency, then this goes to Austin. Okay, Austin, certainly you're not going to argue that they didn't invest in that guy. If they go out and have the kind of offseason I think you and I both think they're going to have, then it's time to see, how good is Teryl Austin as a DC.
Absolutely. Tony, always great having you on the show. We'll have you again on more often, but you can also check him out on AFC North Talk, that they do all their talk. And Tony had a bit of trash talk he got to do against some Browns and Ravens guys at the end of the season there. Granted, the Bengals, Ace and the Bengals, they're flying pretty high and they're doing their thing. And hey, they deserve it. The Bengals are playing great football right now. They deserve that. But, still interesting that, for this, I think, collectively between Locked On and AFC North Talk, I think everybody that doesn't cover a Steelers team all picked the Steelers to finish dead last in the division. And
that's right. I had third.
And look at you hitting it on the money.
Nailed it.
But I do think it's awesome. Tony, let people can find you, where they can get AFC North Talk and other things that you work on.
One other thing about AFC North Talk, now that you bring it up, AFC North Talk, we put all the logos in talk, and the team who finishes last in the division, they get the L. And Steelers did not get the L. Steelers have not had the L since I've been on the show. That'll go back to the Cleveland Browns. Welcome back to last place. Yeah, you can watch AFC North Talk. A lot of fun. It's a roundtable show all about the AFC North. We Steeler fans are going to have a lot of trash talking to do this offseason because we ended the season on quite the high note. So check it out Mondays and Fridays, 5 p.m. Eastern time. You can check that out on YouTube. You can also check me out on my YouTube channel, Steeler Country with Tony Serino.
Absolutely do check out Tony and all his great work. He's awesome. That's why we always have him here. We'll have him here again soon, talking things about your Pittsburgh Steelers. We got Jenna Harner tomorrow, breaking things down for the Friday episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Again, I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where I cover Pitt athletics. Also, check me out here on the Locked On Steelers podcast on Monday through Friday, daily episodes on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. Like this video if you saw it on YouTube. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of our daily episodes. And you can also, if you want to help us out further, go on Apple Podcasts, rate us 5 stars with a positive comment. Do both at the same time. You get a shout out at the end of the show. Thanks again. Back Friday, finishing up the week and getting you ready for Wild Card Weekend right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.